Hello and welcome back to the party. Today we are doing actually one of my favorite types of casting, and that is cuttlefish casting. Some people will also call it cuttlebone casting, and really all it is the calcified hard inner shell that is left over from an actual cuttlefish. Do your thing, editing Lauren. But it's that hard inner part that, if you care, actually helps keep the cuttlefish afloat. I think it helps with buoyancy or something. But you can actually find it at a pet shop. And so that to me makes this actually one of the cheapest ways that you can cast, because you don't really need much else to do this. You need the cuttlefish. You're gonna need just a couple of tools to carve or compress. Really, you can use anything. If you wanted to, you could use a chopstick from takeout, or just like you can use your soldering pick. There's so many different things. We'll get to the table and I'll show you some different things that we can do. Really, all you need is a pack of cuttlefish and some way to melt your metal down. I am not going to be using the vacuum at all today, and that's one of the things that makes this, well, there's a couple things that make this like really cool. One thing is, if you live in a place that is very hot and you are working in a unair conditioned garage like I am, running your kiln for 13 to 15 hours, it doesn't make it crazy hot, but like my kiln, it does warm it up just a little bit. And the last thing you feel like doing is having your kiln run all day when it's 100+ degrees outside. You don't have to worry about the vacuum. And one of my favorite things about cuttlefish casting is that this is a way you're gonna get some of the most beautiful natural texture that you could ever cast with. I really love the texture. It kind of reminds me of waves in the sand after the water retreats back. That's really what the texture is gonna look like here. So what I'm gonna do today is I'm actually gonna show you what the cuttlefish looks like. We're gonna go over to the table and I'm going to try to do a couple different techniques. We'll see how it works out. I'm going to try to do more of a basic cuttlefish cast, and I got a couple of cubic zirconia, just a cheap bag from Amazon. I will link those down below, and I'm going to see if I can actually do a cuttlefish cast with a stone in place. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, we're doing it. This is a bag of cuttlefish that I just ordered off of Amazon. I don't know if I'm even gonna link these down below, because the cuttlefish that we cast with in school were really big. I don't know. These are like Ozempic cuttlefish. I don't know why they're so small. Because they're so small, it means that the pieces we're gonna cast today are gonna be a little bit smaller. Usually if you have the big chunky boy, you can actually take your jeweler saw or a small hacksaw, and you can just cut them in half and use those. But these are so small, I think I'm actually going to have to use 2 different Cuttlebones in order to make one mold to cast in. All right, so let's get to the table and I'll show you what we're gonna do. I really brought everything over here but scissors, huh? So this is what a Cuttlebone looks like. You're gonna have one side that's a little bit harder than the other, and this side is a little bit softer. So when you're doing this, I like to pick 2 that are somewhat similar in size. You could even use some of these little ones, like these 2 I would maybe match up. And you see how these 2 are the softer sides. Well, they don't match up. So in order to get these nice and flat, we're going to end up sanding them. Now you can rub these together in order to get them flat. That's one way to do it. I prefer to use sandpaper to do it. And what you're looking for when you get these nice and flat is you're going to get them so that they meet up perfectly. And if you can see, you don't want to be able to see any light through here, because if you see light through here, then that means that is a path for your metal to travel. I want to show you guys, before we actually do these, I'm going to show you an example of something I did a long time ago. So this is a piece I did a while ago, just a little experiment. And this, I just literally took my scribe and I just carved just a random shape into the cuttlefish. What I really want you guys to look at is, if you can see, look at the really beautiful texture that you get from here. And this is something that is really hard to replicate this. You couldn't even go wrong if you just, carved out a flat pendant or something like that to wear, or even just a really basic signet ring, and you could get that texture. That would be gorgeous. You could actually carve out a shape like I did with this piece, or you could do more of a compression technique and you could really just push in a design that you wanted. So when you do carve out though, I have found that you sometimes get a little more crumbling on the edges versus when you compress. Today what I'm actually going to do is I have a couple of little pieces that I actually 3D printed, and I 3D printed these because I knew I had such small cuttlefish and I wasn't really going to be able to do anything bigger. But I mean, you could do anything. Like if you wanted to take a chess piece or something like that and compress it into a bigger cuttlefish and then you could sprue it up, that would be like absolutely perfect. You could totally do that. But I'm just going to use a couple of these little 3D printed pieces today. Here are the 2mm stones that I'm going to try to cast in place on one of them. I've never done this before, so this should be really cool. And in fact, I actually have not even really done a cuttlefish cast in many years. This was just something that I did in school, and I'm hoping sharing this with you guys will help me remember. Another thing that might be helpful is if you have a brush. This is just a cheap kind of kids toy paintbrush. I actually really like the makeup brushes, like if you find a cheap like elf makeup brush from like Target or Walmart or something, and when you carve out your piece you can actually kind of brush it out, and when you brush out after you do the carving or even the compression, it really is going to help bring some more of that texture out, which is pretty cool. One other little thing, now this is some steel wire. I got this at Home Depot. I think it was maybe $4 or something like that for a pretty decent amount of it. So once we have these two pieces sanded, we're gonna cut off the top and we're gonna make, just like how we did the other casting, we're gonna end up making a little sprue and a button area. We're gonna line everything up and then we're going to make some lines on the side to line it up, but what's gonna hold it together is gonna be this steel wire. Now I have seen some people even use masking tape around there. I don't really like using masking tape or painter's tape because I think it's gonna cause this to crumble. If you actually end up going to the pet store, I have only ever seen these in like packs of 2. I went recently to see if I could scout some out, and I ended up buying these on Amazon because I just know these can be a little bit delicate, and if you break it then you try to salvage it as best you can, but you may end up having to start over if it just kind of crumbles, because you want to make sure that you get kind of a complete seal all the way around, and you're not going to do that if this is in crumbles. You'll understand more as I go along. I have 3 little pairs. I think I'm going to try to do 3 pours of silver today. You don't need to wear gloves. I have gloves on because I'm a lunatic. I actually don't like the feel of like chalky powdery things on my hands. Is anybody else out there like that? And I don't know why, it just kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies. So gloves it is. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to cut off the part that is pointy. It's going to give me like a flat starting point. You can use a hacksaw or even a jeweler saw to get this done. There we go. We got a nice flat end. Perfect. So we are going to go ahead and do this a couple more times. And this stinks. Just want to share that with you. Line these up. I want them to be about the same. Make a little mark. Just so you know, I'm actually starting with the softer side. It's a little easier to get the saw in. This is actually a little hard. All right, so once you have the tips cut off, our goal, see, look how these line up perfectly. Our goal is actually to sand the middle of this so that they are nice and flat and ready for us to make our impression. So like I said, you can rub these together. As you can see how much powder that's making. This can get just a little bit messy, so don't say I didn't warn you. All right, I'm gonna get these flat, and then I am going to repeat the process with my other 2 pairs. If you're gonna use sandpaper instead of rubbing them together, I would recommend a coarser grit. I need to go back to the old Amazon because I think the lowest I have here is maybe this is like a 600 or something. I'm just gonna rub it in like a little figure 8 or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Either way, you don't need to do it for a very long time. As you can tell, this is somewhat soft. I do want to show you guys, this might be a good time to use the brush and look at all, let's see if you can see it. Look at all the texture you're getting in here. And as I brush, you can really just see, look how that texture is just coming alive. That is so pretty. Nature's really out here doing her thing, huh guys? So we are ready to start either carving or doing our imprints here. I went ahead and cut the pointy side off of both ends for all of these, just because I think it's a little bit easier, and I'm a little rusty, so I think it's easier for me to try to go around and see if I have any gaps, because it being flat is what I think is probably most important. Make sure the metal goes where I need it to. So if you are going around and you find that you have a big gap, then you need to just kind of rub them together a little bit more or whip that sandpaper out again. But the best way, like I said, I like to just hold it up to the light and see if I can see any light through it. So now it's time for the fun part. I've 3D printed a couple of different things because I think these would be kind of interesting examples to use and practice on. The first one is this little, kind of like a tree of life kind of medallion pendant thing. I thought this would be kind of interesting because I want to see, when I have something that's really small, what kind of detail am I able to get, right? Am I able to see those branches, or will kind of that waviness and that natural texture from the Cuttlebone, is that going to overtake this? So that's one thing I wanted to try. So that's going to go in its own little cuttlefish. I have something that is a little thicker. I thought the back of this looked a little raggedy, so I did just melt a little Ferris wax over the back because it was just kind of jaggedy how it broke off. But this could be maybe like a cute little pendant. I hadn't had any luck before casting something that already had the bail attached, because and it's probably just my skill level, the hole always ended up filling with metal. And this is probably as thick as I can go in these little guys because they're so small. And then this is just a plain little shape. I think this would be a cute necklace. I'm gonna put this in there, and then this is the one I'm actually gonna see if I can push a little CZ in and see if I can get that into the shape. My hypothesis is that it will either turn out amazing, that's what I'm hoping for. When we are casting and the stones are in place in the kiln, they're kind of like at a warmer temperature already. And so my concern with this is if I have the CZ in here and I'm pouring the silver in, that maybe the stone might shock and crack. So we'll see. A CZ is supposed to be pretty hard. It's supposed to be something easy to cast with. Let's just see what happens. That's why we use the CZ, because we didn't want to use anything super fancy or expensive just to learn on. So I have my two nice flat pieces, and then I have the piece that I want to indent. I think I'm gonna put it maybe about here. I believe the rule is something like you want it at least 3/4 of an inch or an inch from the top. So I'm really just gonna put these two pieces together and kind of smush. Now you kind of want to wiggle it and be careful, because if you push too hard, you will crack it. I have worked really hard on pieces sometimes only to smush these together and go, oh man, and have to start all the way over. And that was not super fun. So you just want to rock it, try to get it compressed in there until we have it, or that gap is closed all the way around. You're going to hear it. It actually kind of sounds like when you're smushing it, almost like a styrofoam. What I like to do is make a couple little marks across here, like little registration marks, just something that helps me line it up a little bit, and then helps you kind of tell like top from bottom. Let me do two over here. Let's do, it's kind of like when we mark off a pattern when we make clothing. So that'll just help me do that. Another thing that we do sometimes is you can take your saw or something, and this is the way we did it. Let me grab this to make sure we get it really tight, is make a little bit of an indentation with your saw or your jeweler's saw, and that is what we're actually gonna slip the wire into. Now we know what's going on with this one. Now we're gonna go ahead and open this up, carefully take our piece out. All right, so we don't need this guy anymore. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make a little bit of a sprue. Just like how we have a sprue when we do the lost wax casting. And we're just gonna, hopefully you guys can see, we're gonna just make a little sprue. So you're basically just making like a little funnel. It doesn't have to be incredibly deep, but I'm just gonna make a good path. So then we're gonna put these back together. I'm gonna line up where our marks were. Make sure that I have a nice little button here. Now, one thing that might be a little confusing, and this is something I and trying to remember is how to calculate the right amount of silver to measure out. Usually when we do it with the lost wax, right before we actually attach it to the rubber sprue bottom, I weigh everything, and then there is a calculator for me to use that is going to convert the wax weight to the silver weight or whatever metal you're casting in. I don't know really how to calculate that here because I don't really have anything to weigh. So I tried weighing these and they were all so light that they didn't even register on my scale. So I am just going to do kind of a random guesswork here. I'm going to say that, I don't know, maybe each of these is 1 gram, which I know it isn't because it's too light. But in this case, I would rather pour a little bit extra. It's not like I have to throw the silver away I don't use or anything, right? So we have a little funnel. And I do actually really like using the scribe because it is kind of rounded here and I can get a nice little smooth tunnel in there. This is where our brush comes in handy. Just a little soft brush to try to get that out. Now, see what I was talking about before. I don't know if I'm gonna get that texture because as I am kind of cleaning it up, I am losing, at least for me visually, I'm losing a little bit of that tree. So this might just be kind of a weird medallion. But, you know, if I'm like, I don't care for that, I could try to line this back up and push in a little bit more. But keep in mind, like, the more you push in, that push in is like the thickness of your piece. You know, if I pushed it all the way till I was like halfway through the piece, I would have kind of a fat little chunk. Did anything? Yeah, a little bit. All right, I'm gonna put these over here and put that off to the side quite gingerly, and then we're gonna start on the next one. The same thing applies here with the bow. I am going to put it maybe somewhere around there. I'm gonna go ahead and fold it over and do the impression. Now, ones that are thick, I think are a little harder. Let's see if you can see it kind of smushing. Because the instinct is to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and the odds of this cracking are so high. So you just want to kind of keep rocking and carefully squeezing and putting pressure on different places. You don't want to do it too hard so that you have to start over again. So you're going to have to practice a little bit of patience here, I think, which is really me talking to myself, telling myself to be patient and not just squeeze it and be like, done. You can see I don't really have much of a gap anymore. This one is all ready. I did notches for my wire, did a couple little notches to match this up, and we have a pretty good indentation of this little bow. One thing I actually totally just remembered I'm supposed to do right now, you want to do little vents. So you'll have a little cleanup, but I think you need a little vents on here, and that's to allow the gas to escape. I'm just gonna do a couple of them. I don't need to do like a million. Okay, we got a little bit of gas venting there. Hopefully I'm remembering correctly. All right, so we're gonna put this, let's say we put this maybe like here-ish. That look good to you guys? Collective nod from the internet. Yes, let's say yes, let's all agree. Use our scribe, pull this out. Be gone with you. There we go. Okay, that's a really good indentation, right? I want as much of that texture as I can get. Maybe you don't want that much texture, in which case you would probably not use the brush at all. Why am I doing that? I literally am brushing that right into the other one. You're probably hollering at the screen. I know when I edit this video, I'm probably gonna holler at the screen. Like the vents, I don't believe you have to do these on both sides. I don't remember doing them on both sides. That really doesn't mean anything. That I don't remember. So I'm gonna put this in here. This is 2.3 millimeters in thickness, and these stones are 2 millimeters. Here's one last look at where the stone is. I, for some reason, tried to get it in the center, although that's not how my life works, so who knows where this is going to end up at the end. All right, let's close this up. I'm gonna pull the wire out and I'm gonna show you how to wire wrap this. This is a 16 gauge, which I think is honestly overkill. When I bought this, I assumed that I was gonna be able to get some regular size cuttlefish. These are so small, I'm worried about making this tight and cracking these. So I went and dug in my hoard. I have some craft wire that I think will work just as well. This is actually 24 gauge. So we're gonna use this instead. I think this will be a little easier to not break our pieces. All right, so I'm gonna make sure that my lines match up, and then you can see where I made the little notch with my saw. And then I am going to put my wire into my little notches. Get these together. This is also a good time to check and make sure that you're not seeing any light. I'm not wanting to hear a lot of cracks. All right, this is all wrapped up. I'm actually just so I remember what these are. I'm going to put a little T on this one. This is the one with our tree on it. So we're gonna repeat that process with the other ones. I'm gonna be careful with how I hold this. I'm gonna try to hold it straight up and down. I wanna make sure that the stone stays where I want it. So I have got my little spinny pie pan here full of pumice, and I've got these all ready to go. I'm gonna put these down in here so they don't fall over. You could also use a third hand. Shout out to the person who commented on one of my other videos. I had been putting flux in my crucible and I forgot that you were actually not supposed to put flux in a graphite crucible. Thank you for reminding me. So this is probably about 12 grams of silver. This is some leftover stuff from other projects. If you recognize when we cast this 3D printed ring, go and watch that video. If you have not, this was when I tried to do the stone casting, and this was the piece I actually lost the garnet out of. So I'm gonna melt this down and we're gonna make something awesome with it. It takes about 30 to 45 minutes for my little furnace to melt these. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop these in, and then I'll come back to you when it is time to pour. Okay, so we are up to temperature. Wish me luck. All right, let's try that again. It's so hard to get it in these little holes. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I am not excellent at pouring. The middle one maybe? All right, so something happened. We got one of them. All right, I'm gonna clean this up. We're gonna keep going. This guy's done. All right, it didn't come out of the bottom. It just spilled next to it. Let's clean this up and we're gonna start the other two again. All right, well, we got one more. Hey, slowly but surely, we're gonna get every single one of these done. Whatever time this is the charm. Okay, so if you are wondering what this smells like at this point, this smells like a combination of burnt hair and seafood, like if the Little Mermaid left her flat iron on too long. If you are careful enough, you might be able to reuse these. So, I mean, mine look a little busted, but you never know. Let's see how they came out. We're gonna open these with some cutters and then go ahead and quench these. These are cooler now, but these are not cool enough to touch with your bare hands. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to reuse these guys. I think these are raggedy. Yeah, these are crumbling a bit too much. But when you have a large one, I feel like your odds are a little bit better. All right, it looks like we cast something, doesn't it? Okay, let's go ahead and put that in there. Yeah, I think that is gone. But you know what? It's not really a big deal, especially the way that we did it where we 3D printed it. So also you can tell from my struggles that it was really, really hard, that the hole is so small, and I am still practicing my pours, so you can probably tell. This is B for bow. Let's see, did we get a bow? I see a lot of ash in here. Let's see. Yeah, I think we got a pretty nice little bow. I'll show you guys once we get these cleaned up. It'll be so much easier for you to see. Let's see. Who knows what is in here? This could be literally anything. Interesting. Okay. Let's get this cleaned up and we're gonna zoom in and see. I'm actually really excited. It doesn't look like the stone is exactly where I left it, but I would say pretty close. I'm gonna get these cleaned up. Let's do this guy first. This is actually kind of cool, right? So you can see the stone.
It slipped up in there. So honestly, I can't see the whole stone, so I can't tell you if it cracked. But this looks like a complete stone. It looks like it's just in here sideways, but this is gonna be really cool cleaned up. Okay, so we don't have a ton of definition, but you can still tell, that does still actually look like a tree. The funny thing is, I feel like the natural texture from the cuttlefish kind of looks like more like a tree than the actual print did. Actually, we can compare, right? Here is, let me rinse it out because that actually has cuttlefish stuff in it. Okay. So we can actually go in and compare the texture from the original 3D printed piece and the little medallion that we made. I kind of feel like this still looks like a tree. I think this came out really good. So this came out really pretty. Doesn't this bow to me looks so much like a butterfly? And again, let me grab our original so you can see what we compressed in there and what we got out. And then that's what the back looks like. And the back, if you remember, I mean, that looks kind of like what I did. I tried to smooth out some of that really rough part where the 3D print supports were a little iffy. Let me go ahead and get these cleaned up just a little bit. I'm not gonna totally finish these, but I'll clean them up just a little bit and then I'll let you guys see how they all turned out all together. And then we'll just do a few final thoughts and if I have any tips that I think you guys might want to know if you're gonna get started doing this.
So we have definitely had worse casts, right? Even if you have just watched me struggle to remember how to cast on this channel, other than just kind of cleaning up the edges, I don't really want to lose the texture. For me, that's a good reason of why I like this kind of casting, is I just really like that texture. I think the lesson here is that yes, I can actually cast in place with cuttlefish casting. I'm gonna have to figure out how to keep it from shifting when I actually cast, even with me being careful trying to keep it upright. I mean, you saw how that went. Like, I'm a little chaotic. I can't see the entire stone, but it doesn't look like it cracked. These could probably do well with a little time in the tumbler. If I had any tips for you, it would be, one, to make sure that you have a really clean funnel going into the part that you carve out. I think that's really important. Two would be that I wish that I had been able to find some larger cuttlefish. I wasn't able to find it. The ones that we used to cast with in school were really about maybe this big a piece, nice, and they were really like wide and you were able to just cut one in half and use it. And I really preferred those because it's not just, oh, you can cast bigger pieces, but as you saw, I really struggled with being able to pour into that little hole in the top. And I'm not like the best at pouring metal. I'm still kind of like getting back into the swing of that. And I'm not good with like spatial reasoning in general. So it's a little bit of a struggle for me, but it is easier if you have a bigger target, right? So us having that little hole didn't help. And if I had been able to find larger ones, then I think that might have been a little bit easier and I wouldn't have had to like heat up metal and pour it so many times. Now I could also do like a ring. You saw that we were able to cast like with the bow, you can get thicker items. But for us, I was a little leery once the cuttlefish came in and I saw how small they were, just because they were so shallow, and I was worried about once I did an indentation actually having it crack. This is kind of messy, just to remind you about that. So make sure you're working in a space where you can kind of be gross. And it does stink. I know I've mentioned that, but it really does smell. So anyway, let me know down below, have you guys actually tried cuttlefish casting? Do you have a cuttlefish hookup for me? Let me know if you know a guy. That's gonna do it for me today. I will see you guys in the next one. Go forth, be kind, be creative.